Christmas, we thought. And yet, well, here I am, taking down the decorations again. And the end of the war still no closer. 4 times I put this angel up. Each time hoping the next time would be in a better world. A peaceful world. But no. Seems like there's no place on this earth for angels. Just devils. Devils dressed in blood and mud. And singing songs of death and pain to the tune of the machine gun and artillery.
Morning.
Morning, Jenkins.
Fire's been up in the office and put the kettle on as well. Oh, and Pip's all right. They'll sort them now.
Good, good.
Do you want some help with me, sir? You know, with the decorations, please.
No, thank you, Jenkins. I'll be fine. But you'd better run along now. The first over train's due through shortly. Make sure the platform's clear with it.
Spick and span, sir, as you like.
Good lad.
It's cold though this morning, isn't it? Chills you right through, it does.
Well, get a move on then. If you do a bit more and talk a little less, you'll find he don't get so cold. So anyway, will you get this table back in my office on your way through, will you?
Right you all, sir.
Good lad. Have you given up smoking that pipe? It's going to kill you, you know.
It's not one thing without a pipe, sir.
All right, all right.
Corporal Ira Watkins, 6th Battalion, Welsh Regiment. An officer and a company sergeant major would come around every night with a ration of rum. People thought it was to make us mad or to give us courage, but it wasn't. It was just to keep us warm at night, see? We never got enough to make us drunk. I remember once, up in the Bethune sector, these 2 lads, they stole a whole jar of the stuff, tried to drink it all. When we found them the next morning, they were dead, drowned in their own vomit. I remember looking at them lying there. Their faces were as white as marble, as white as marble.
Sure I will, Maggie. I've been dying for a cuppa all morning.
No, I mean, I hope you enjoy it, because that's the last thing we're getting from me.
We had a tea already? I thought we got some in just last week.
No, Bill, you listen to me. I'm not making you tea anymore. I'm protesting.
What are you protesting, Maggie?
It's gone far enough, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I'm making a stand.
Well, what is it? Are you standing up or ain't you?
I'm talking about equality, Bill. Equal representation. Votes for women.
What do you need votes for, Maggie?
The same reason as you do. I work. I pay my taxes and I deserve to have a say in who runs this country, just the same as any man.
Your husband, he votes, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course he does.
And do you and him disagree on political matters?
No, not really. On the whole, we hold the same sort of views.
There you go, then. All those men up and down the country voting, they're voting on behalf of their families, ain't they? Well, you get a bunch of women all voting the same as their husbands, it's going to confuse the whole blooming issue.
But what about women who think different from their husbands? Or women with no husbands at all?
Oh, I don't like to dwell on matters like that, Maggie.
Do you know, John Stuart Mill thought women should have had the vote 50 years ago.
Now, that ain't fair, Maggie.
Why?
Oh, I don't know who that is.
And yet you get to vote. It's the bloody liberty. Right, that's it. I'm on strike.
Maggie, can I have a biscuit before you start protesting? Maggie?
Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting to vote. Women have husbands, they are protected. Women have sons by whom they're directed. Women have fathers, they're not neglected. Why are they wanting to vote? get every vote.
Gunner Leonard Onsworth, 124 Heavy Battery Royal Garrison Artillery. The force started on the 15th of January, with rain as well. It was so complete that the grounds just collapsed. The end of the dagger fell in and buried one of the cooks. He'd have suffocated if we hadn't got to him in time. That day we had to move 4 of the guns to Sorrel, a regular village about 11 miles southwest of Cambrai. We couldn't have picked a worse one for it. It was just a complete quagmire. We had to use these big, 10-12 foot long bits of wood we call gun planks that we carried in the wagons. You put them down, ran the gun along them, then picked them up, ran them to front and did it again. Over and over in the mud. It was a bloody nightmare of a job.
Geoffrey Anquetel Studdert Kennedy was also known as Woodbine Willie, the soldier's friend. He was an Anglican priest and poet who won the Military Cross for bravery, serving as a padre in the trenches, where he rescued British and German wounded alike. He was very proud of his nickname, Woodbine Willie, which he earned from his work on troop trains, passing out Bibles and cigarettes to the soldiers. A chain smoker himself, to earn the trust of the troops, Kennedy would swear like a trooper. At the outset of war, he firmly believed it was every man's duty to serve. But by 1918, he'd become disillusioned, and after the war, he spent his life campaigning as a pacifist against conflict.
Morning, lads. My name's Jeff Kennedy, and as you can see, I'm a padre, but don't let that put you off. If you like, you can call me by my nickname, Woodbine Willie. That's all less formal, I'm sure you'll agree.
What's the church doing here?
It's Joe Bartle! Oh, well that got your attention, didn't it? Look, I can see you're sceptical, a bit cynical, and I can understand that. I was the same when I was your age, you see. My dad, he were a clergyman as well. Rural dean in a small church up in the picturesque and most beautiful part of England known as the Lake District. Oh, that were a challenge for my dear and long-suffering mother. She were fastidious about the time the family spent together. Guarded such moments quite zealously. But she were equally fastidious about the cleanliness of the house, and these two things were often at odds. The agricultural nature of our surroundings and our love of them, aye, that were a challenge. You see, she loved to see the family together, just enjoying themselves, but equally, she loved to see the house immaculate, without a stain on the carpet or a mark on the walls. Some of that to give. Hence, the creation by my father of the outhouse. Into the outhouse would be deposited anything muddy. And it was only when that had happened that my mother would welcome us with open arms into our wonderful, wonderful home. Now, one of you, no names, no background, asked me earlier about the concept of heaven, which is hardly surprising considering the situation we currently find ourselves in. So, what do I think heaven's like? Well, I'll put it simply. I think heaven is going to be an immaculate, wonderful, incredible place. Spotless. And I think our welcome into heaven is going to be absolutely bloody amazing. But, gentlemen, the outhouse is not in heaven. Oh no. The outhouse is here on earth. And it is here, gentlemen, that you shall deposit anything that might leave a mark on the immaculate interior of heaven. No, take the lads. You might leave it.
Good, mate.
Off you go. Best of luck.
See you later.
God be with you. Just seen another lot off it.
Yeah, know that I have, yeah.
What you reading? Must be important. You never even heard me coming.
No, it's not really. No, it's just Polaroid.
What about the war?
Oh, yeah. And about myself, well, sort of.
Really? Poem about the vicar?
Oh, yeah, well, it's as much about Woodbine Willie as about Macaulay, you know. Yeah. Would you like to hear it?
Well, I'd love to, really, but I'm a bit busy with all these troop trains.
I'll soldier then. Look, I promise you, it's short, really.
All right then, Jeff. Let's hear it. But it better be bloody short.
I promise. Woodbine Willie. They gave me this name like their nature, compacted of laughter and tears, a sweet that was born of the bitter, a joke that was torn from the years. And their travail and their torture, Christ's fools, atoning my sins with their blood, who grinned in their agony, sharing the glorious madness of God. Their name, let me hear it, the symbol of unpaid, unpayable debt. The men to whom I owed God's peace, I put off with a cigarette.
Very nice, Jeff. Very nice. Look, I'm sorry, but I've got to get back to work now.
So up. So on.
My name is Thomas Mann. I was born and raised in a small village outside of northern Steeltown. I joined up within 6 weeks of Britain declaring war on Germany. I was 18 years old. My mother didn't want me to go. My father was secretly proud.
My name is Frank Beck. I was born one of 7 in flat wheat farming country about as far from the sea as you can get. My father was the village pastor. My mother, for a time, the schoolmistress. When war broke out, I'd just turned 17 and had no thought of going. They said it would be over by Christmas, everything settled and on as even. But it wasn't. On the day of my 18th birthday, my conscription papers arrived. My mother cried.
Basic training was hell. We were just boys away from home for the first time, and the drill sergeants were swine. 13 weeks of purgatory, route marches, PT, bayonet training, and what was still referred to as musketry. We started the war in the age of the musket, and ended in the age of the aeroplane, the tank, the machine gun, and poison gas.
Drill instructors were all regular soldiers. They despised us, made our lives hell. We couldn't wait to escape the depot and go to the front. How little we knew.
With all those stories of life in the trenches, so familiar now, but at the time it was an unimaginable ordeal, beyond comprehension. Nothing could prepare us for it.
Like some biblical vision of the underworld. Not the bombing and blood and the pain and fear of death and battle. Those were terrible enough. But worst, almost, was the filthy, degenerate condition into which we descended within a few short months.
And how quickly we modern men regressed. Of an era of civilization and learning ripped away from us. We were mere degenerates, scrabbling a worthless existence in the mud, alongside the rats and cockroaches that shared our holes in the ground.
Boredom was our worst enemy. Tunnelling, patrolling, and the occasional nighttime raid were the only breaks from the monotony.
Worst of all were the major attacks. The last big push that would finally break the enemy lines. There were plenty of those. It was always the same. First, the deafening cannonade that lit up the night sky in a rain of hellfire. Then the unearthly silence of dawn. And in the midst of the smoke, the ghostly figures of thousands of soldiers advancing in their trenches, bayonets gleaming.
Eyes glittering with fear, waiting for the whistles of 0 hour to send them over the top of their revenants into the chattering teeth of the machine gun.
To die upon the wire, or to hang there like a piece of meat, awaiting the merciful release of a friendly bullet.
I was there at the Somme, the big push. Got us nowhere but the cemetery. 22,000 casualties on the first day of the battle. 400,000 by the end. We thought God was on our side until then. After that, we knew he had forsaken us.
I was at Passchendaele. The enemy were remorseless, relentless, and cruel. But we knew that God was on our side. and we drove them back into the mud. The bastards.
This is my testimony. Frank Beck, Corporal, 10th Service Battalion, Royal Warwickshire Regiment.
Thomas Mann, Unterofficer, 35th Brandenburg Infantry Regiment.
Good morning, the General said, when we met him last week on the way to the line. Now the soldiers he smiled at are most of them dead, and we're cursing his staff for incompetent swine. He's a cheery old card, grunted Harry to Jack, as they slogged up to Arras with rifle and pack. But he did for them both by his plan of attack.
Hello, Maggie.
Bill, have you seen the news?
Bright man falls off pier.
No, under that.
Piano for sale in Croydon. Keys not included.
No, not that. That.
Representation of the People Act. Oh, well, there you go. You got the vote. Well done. Now, if you was going to put the kettle on any time soon...
It's a bloody outrage.
What? I thought that's what you wanted.
I wanted equal rights. Look at this. Any man over the age of 21 is allowed to vote.
Yeah, well, that seems fair enough, what with the war and all.
But only a woman over the age of 30 who's a property owner or married to a property owner is allowed to vote.
Far be it from me to point it out, Maggie. You are over 30. A bit.
Yes, I know that.
And your husband, he owns your house, doesn't he?
Yes, but that's not the point. There are millions of women just as capable of using the vote as I am, but they can't because they're under 30. Women who own their own homes and pay taxes, but have no say in who they pay them to. You know, John Stuart Mill must be spinning in his grave.
I still don't know who that is, Maggie.
I don't see what's so hard to understand. What's a man in his 20s going to know that woman of the same age don't? That allows him to pick the right MP. He could still be living at home with his parents, and yet somehow he's more qualified than a woman who owns her own home.
Oh, come on, Maggie. Most blokes in their 20s have been in the trenches, ain't they now? Well, seeing all the evils of the world like that, must give them some form of insight.
Well, I'm not giving up. If it takes 10 years, if it takes 100, we will get equal representation. Not just votes for women, votes for all women.
Maggie? Maggie, wait! Will you show me how to use the T-O first? Maggie?
The 23rd of February, 1918.
Went into town today. The place was covered in posters from the War Office, urging young men to enlist and serve king and country, do their bit, make Britain proud. Well, they've got my husband Frank. They're not having my Jack as well. Thank God he's too young to join up. I've heard rumours, though, that some silly lads are lying about their age. It don't help that the recruiting officers are being paid a shilling a man.
The 25th of February, 1918.
I don't know what to do. My Jack came in today and announced he'd joined up. Over my dead body, I said.
Too late, Mum. Went down to the recruiting office and it's done. I'll be off in a couple of weeks.
He's only a boy. How could they enlist him? He boasted that he lied about his age, told them he was 18 and they believed him. I could have clocked him one right there and then. Grandad just said that would be the making of him, but I know better. My Frank has written awful things about what's going on over there. The constant shelling, the noise, the churning fear in the pit of your stomach that you'll be next over the top. Things that would make your hair curl. I wish I'd read some of them to our Jack now, but I was trying to protect him. I didn't want him to worry over his dad.
The 28th of February, 1918.
Jack came home in his uniform today. My heart missed a beat.
He swaggered around as proud as Punch.
You're a real man now, lad.
His granddad said, but all I could see was a little boy dressed up in grown men's clothes.
Only 9 days now, Mum. Then I'm off to basic training. I can't wait. Ron from down Bucket Road joined up too, so at least I'll have someone I know to train with. We're going to have such a laugh.
I wonder what Ronald's mum thinks of all this. Her lad's 18, so I suppose she's been expecting it, but does that make it easier or harder?
The 1st of March, 1980.
A letter arrived from the War Office today.
Private Jack Frederick Williams has passed his medical and is now expected to report to the training camp at Woolwich on the 8th of March at 0800 hours.
That's it then. He's going.
The lads, in their hundreds, to Ludlow come in for the fair. There's men from the barn and the forge, and the mill and the fold. The lads for the girls, and the lads for the liquor are there. And there, with the rest, are the lads that will not be old. There's chaps from the town and the field, and the till and the cart, and many to count are the stalwart, and many the brave, and many the handsome of face, and the handsome of heart, and few who will carry their looks or their truth to the grave. I wish one could know them. I wish there were tokens to tell those fortunate fellows that now you can never discern. And then one could talk with them friendly and bid them farewell and watch them depart on the way that they will not return. But now you may stare as you will, and there's nothing to scan. And brushing your elbow unguessed at and not to be told, they carry back bright to the coiner the mintage of man, the lads that will die in their glory and will not be old.
Anything interesting, Bill? Oh, I should blooming say so. They're bringing in rationing. Eh? Rationing, I tell you. Meat, butter, margarine.
Come on, Bill. They started this malarkey last month and they started rationing sugar.
Did they? Oh. Just as well I didn't take one spoonful of my tea then.
And one spare piece horse and now one as well, eh?
Leave over, or heading home? Back to the front, recalled early too. Yeah, me as well. Wonder what's up? Nothing good, I bet. Well, we'll get a warm welcome from that Kaiser Bill, which is more than I'll ever get from my bleeding sergeant. What you got there then? Oh, the wife this time. Just got it before I came to leave. Do you know, I haven't seen a copy in ages. Came across a copy of that honk once, but it weren't the same. The old wife was sure us up no end. Yeah, need a laugh every now and then. Here, take a look. Mind you, some of the brass hats didn't see it that way when it first started. Wanted to ban it, they did, probably still do. But it'd be more trouble than it's worth. Too popular with the poor bloody infantry. I'm glad they kept it going. Who writes it? Some fellas in the show choristers. They've been all over. Seen some of the worst of it. One of them, Roberts, I think, picked up the military cross a while back. Ah, they've got something from that memory airlock in this one. You do know it's a wind-up. It's, what do they call it? A satire, that right bloke? Hilaire Belloc. I hate that lying swine. I mean, he's never even been to France, let alone to the blooming front. And these fake ads. So funny. How do they come up with all this stuff?
Oh, this is really quite intolerable! That is
contraption. I mean, how am I supposed to drown out the sound of the German shells if the German shells keep making my gramophone jump?
Yes, well, the Holland over it loves
Huh? Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Tell you another thing. I'm not impressed with the service around here.
Oh, I quite agree. I'll be sure to mark it down in my review.
I mean, I ordered lunch and it still hasn't arrived.
It's only 11:30.
Yes, but that was 2 days ago.
Supply problems?
No. Rather think my Batman's been shot.
Can't get the staff these days.
Well, not in one piece, anyway.
You know, if we get this issue of the paper out, it's going to be a miracle.
Yeah.
These are the Germans that stopped shelling for now. Should give us some peace and quiet.
What now?
The train's in! Come and see here! They're coming! We surrender! And demand rooms at the Hotel Excelsior in Berlin!
With a bath!
And full room service!
Yep. Oh, it's you! Where's my lunch?
Sir?
Did I or did I not send you out 2 days ago to get me a side of beef, a piece of lobster, and a bottle of rather good ordinary claret?
You did, sir.
Yes, I did, sir. And here you are, but 2 days later with nothing to show but a vacant expression on your face. Where have you been?
Well, they were out on lobster, sir. They had some bully beef, but it was all mouldy. So I was coming back when I got diverted, sir.
Diverted?
Hey, I ain't no lead slinger, sir. I just stopped for a gasp, but I was third man up, wasn't I? Next thing I know, Fritz is trying to give me a good night kiss, trying to fit me for a wooden overcoat. Bleeder only ring me though. I got patched up by a pretty BAD at the Hot Coulsdon. I came straight back when she let me out.
What?
I'm gone, sir. The squareheads nearly did for me.
Private, are you trying to tell us that you were delayed because you were shocked?
Yes, sir.
Then why didn't you say that?
I did.
Private, if you can't do anything, why don't you sit down there and be quiet?
Right, sir.
Right, what have we got in the way of content?
Not a lot, actually.
What about Chesterton's pieces on the latrine?
He's brown red, sir.
Did? When?
Yesterday, the Bosch put the kibosh on him. Right basket case they made of him and all. Practically had to mop him up with a sponge. As if we had a sponge.
Never trusted him. Never trust the fighting ones. They're always the first ones to get blown up.
Yeah, they can't help themselves. What about James' piece on trench cuisine?
Ah, yes. His recipes on rapeau van, mud on fruit, and Alsatian bacon.
Alsatian bacon, isn't that German?
No, that's German Shepherd, something completely different. Anyway, it doesn't matter, he's really not quite too laddie.
Oh, really?
Yes. He currently thinks of himself as a French exotic dancer called Madame Fifi Lemaire.
Well, I never. They're sending you back to Blighty, are they?
Good Lord, no.
Why not?
And there'll be a riot. There's a concert tomorrow and he's top billing. Yes, it reminds me, I've got 2 tickets. Do you want to come along?
Perhaps not.
No, suit yourself. Do me a favour though, don't mention it to Colonel Maltravers, will you?
If you say so. Why?
Well, because he's stepping out with the lovely Fifi on Saturday. Now, what about Simpson's piece on Mrs. Hun & Co., trench outfitters to the gentry?
Sorry, sir. He's dead too, sir.
What?
When?
Yesterday.
Who killed in the attack?
No, firing squad.
Whatever for?
He was a spy, sir.
Oh, well, it's not a total shock, I suppose. He did go to Cambridge.
What about this? Little Tom Buffett thought he would snuff it when hit in the chest with a shell. The shell was a dud, and then all of a sudden he jumped up and is now doing well.
Yes, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
But we should put some more of those in.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, we could put in one of our rhymes. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, could suck but would not
No.
Right, how about it? We beat 'em on the Marne, we beat 'em on the Aisne, they gave us hell at Neuve-Chapelle, but here we go again.
Yes, well, thank you, Private. Should the position of Trench Laureate ever become available, we'll be sure to put your name forward. But in the meantime,
Yes, sir?
shut up.
Okay, listen to this one. Sirs, As the dark days drag on, I dread my existence. I stand, sleep, and eat in a foot of water. I can no longer feel my toes. Soon, I'm sure, I'll be sent over the top, there to be cut down by machine gun fire. What is the point? Signed, Troubled.
What a whining Nancy.
Oh, absolutely, he's got it better than most. Only a foot of water. Luxury.
As a reply?
Oh, absolutely. Dear Troubled, when conditions get you down, remember that General Hagen and his entire staff are behind you. About 60 miles behind you, in fact, and a lovely chateau and a meuble somewhere. If you ever get to go there, try the veal. It's excellent.
Wonderful.
We've still got some space. What about some adverts?
Yes, I can fill the space.
Yes.
Oh, well, the lads are always looking for souvenirs, sir.
That's a jolly good idea, Private.
Really? I've got a few more.
Yeah, let's not spoil it.
Now this. For your girl at home, we can supply any souvenir with thousands to choose from.
Ah, yes. German shoulder boards, 1 shilling each, 10 for 12.
What about with bloodstains?
Oh, lovely. 1 shilling, 6 each, and 15 for a dozen. Good shout, Private.
Shell holes.
50 shillings each.
Duck balls. English 5 shillings, German 10.
Absolutely. And iron crosses, 6p a gross. And bullets lovingly embedded into a Bible. Price on application.
To please your best girl, it is clear, you must procure a souvenir.
Excellent, that's it. Yeah, we've still got some space, though.
Well, what about another outing from our renowned war correspondent, Hilary Belloc?
Ah, absolutely. In this article, I wish to highlight the end of the campaign for the Western Front.
Let's suppose that there are 12 million men as the total fighting population of Germany.
Of which 8 million have been, or currently are being killed, which leaves us with only 4 million remaining.
And let's not forget that there are 1 million men in the German Navy, who are therefore, for all intents and purposes, non-combatants.
Quite right. And a further 2,500,000 are unable to fight due to obesity from eating sausage.
Which leaves just 500,000.
Of which 497,250 are suffering from incurable diseases.
No prizes for guessing what they are.
A further 2,150 are occupied with the other Central Powers, and 584 are generals.
Thus, we find we are currently facing only 16 German soldiers on the entire Western Front, which we understand you cannot mount a credible defence.
Or attack.
Therefore, with one more big push,
Possibly 2.
Or 3.
or 4 at the outside, I recommend the end of the fighting on the Western Front.
You know, I really think we might do this.
Yes, that's good. Oh, you have to say it, Lieutenant!
But you just said...
Yes, Private. It must be one of ours.
I don't want to be a soldier. I don't want to go to war. I'd rather stay home, along the streets to roam, and be looked after by a well-paid whore. I don't want a bayonet up me arsehole. I don't want me bollocks shot away. I'd rather stay in England, merry, merry England, and fornicate me bloody days away.
Hey! Brad, buddy! I need your help.
What now? I'm shipping out today, Phil.
Yeah, but hear me out, okay? You know that girl I told you about, Nancy?
Nancy Cavendish, she was only the MP's daughter, but she knew how to handle the whip.
That's the one. Well, I'm meeting her pops this weekend, and I may have given the impression that I have to take this whole Russian problem thing.
But in reality,
I can just about find Russia on a map.
what do you want me to do about that?
Well, you know all about what's going on around there, right?
Son, Katya's brother's staying with us at the moment, actually. He got caught up in the fighting, his house got burnt down.
Well, that's great!
What?
I mean, no, not the house burning down, obviously, but, you know, you can fill me in.
Fill you in? It's a very complex geopolitical landscape, and my train's going to be here any minute.
Well, I don't need the play-by-play, just give me the highlights.
Fine. So it all kicked off when the Tsar...
Who?
The Tsar was like the king. Anyway, he was off leading the army, and his wife was left in charge, but she was spending a lot of time with a man called Rasputin.
Rasputin. Ain't he that little hairy dwarf guy that makes folk guess his name?
No, that's Rumpelstiltskin. He's not real.
So how is the queen hanging out with him if he's not real?
Rasputin is real. Rumpelstiltskin isn't.
Ah, gotcha. So, Rasputin, what's he all about?
There is some kind of monk. Anyway, there were these rumors that he and the Tsarina...
Serena who?
The Tsarina, the queen. There were these rumors that she and Rasputin were holding amorous congress together. So they killed him.
They killed the king!
No, they killed Rasputin. They poisoned him, shot him, and possibly drowned him as well. The point is, he ended up quite dead.
Okay, so that's the Russian problem, right? Sounds more complex than that.
Oh no, there's more. You see, the Russian people had a lot of problems. Not enough food, too many killed in the fighting. There's widespread discontent and civil unrest.
Yeah, it sounds like Chicago to me.
It all came to a head with the February Revolution.
And this is February last year, yep?
No, it was March last year.
They had the February Revolution in March.
Oh, they were using an out-of-date calendar of February for their March for us.
Okay.
Anyway, there was these protests in the streets. And the Tsar sent in troops to have them put down by force, but the troops didn't like that, so they joined in instead.
Well, so what did the king do then?
No, what he could do, he had to abdicate.
What's that?
He resigned.
Okay, so Russia's got no leader, and that's the Russian problem.
Well, no, they had another revolution in November.
Oh, what's that, the December Revolution?
No, the October Revolution. You see, the new government was no good either, so the Bolsheviks got together.
No, Bolshevik, who's he?
Not he, they, the Bolsheviks. They're a political party led by a man called Lenin, big on workers' rights, power to the people, that sort of thing.
A bunch of liberals then. So what do?
Well, they marched on the government and kicked them out, and then they started their own government based on the teachings of Marx.
I know him! I saw his vaudeville back in the States. Funny guy. You know, with the glasses and the cigar and the paint on mustache.
Who?
Groucho Marx.
I'm talking about Karl Marx. He's a philosopher, not a vaudeville actor.
Is he one of Groucho's brothers?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this new guy Lenin is running Russia, and that's what's got everyone so gosh darn excited.
No, because not everyone's behind the Bolsheviks, you see. So there's these counter-revolutionaries, the White Army, who are fighting the Reds.
Okay, like chess, yeah?
What do you know about chess?
Well, I know there's two different colors. That's it.
I'm impressed.
Okay, so why do we care about this little civil war? You know, can't they just sort it out themselves?
Well, you see, Russia was on our side. At least they were under the Tsar, but this new Russia started making deals with the Hun. So a lot of people think we should send in troops.
To fight the Russians.
No, to fight the Reds. We can get the Reds out of power, we can put the Whites in charge and get Russia back on side.
Jeez, I can see why they call them revolutions. They just keep on coming around.
Do you think you've got all that, Phil?
Okay, let me give this a go. So, the Queen of Russia was playing the blanket hornpipe with a little hairy dwarf guy who was not a made-up dwarf, he was a monk. and so they killed him a couple of times because they didn't like him, but then they still didn't like the royals, so they gave them the bum's rush in March. No, February, which was actually in March, and got a new government. And then, oh geez, and then in October, they got rid of that government and got a new one, which, no, November, one of the two. And then, they're going to get rid of them again this month, or next month, or last month, or one of these months, and the British are going to be there, or maybe they're not.
Yes, that's it. Simple, eh? Well, good luck with Nancy's old man, with a mustache.
Yeah, simple. I'm doomed.
with you only breathe. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you.
Tea, Minister.
Yes, thank you. 3 sugars, please.
I'll just get that organised.
Have you seen his intelligence reports?
Yes, sir.
What do you make of them?
Nothing good if these are to be believed, sir.
I know. There's no reason for us not to believe them, sadly.
Quite. It looks like the Germans are on the verge of coming to an agreement with the Bolsheviks. Although it's hard to see how, if these to be believed, the terms are incredibly onerous.
I know. Ceding vast amounts of territory to the Germans, including Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. Worse, vast amounts of their industry. More to their entire coal mining capability.
The Bolsheviks must be bloody desperate, sir.
Oh, they're cunning devils. With their war against Germany over, at least on paper, they can concentrate on winning their own civil war. But they'll never let the Germans get away with it. Napoleon couldn't beat the Russians. Pretty damn certain the Kaiser won't manage it either, not in the long run.
But in the short term, sir.
In the short term, unless I'm reading this very much wrongly, we are about to face one of the biggest challenges of the war so far. The Russian surrender will free up hundreds of thousands of German troops, battle-hardened, experienced.
For the Western Front.
I'm afraid so. If Ludendorff does what I expect him to do, he'll use his superior numbers to mount a massive offensive. The question is just where? And for what?
Perhaps Paris, sir. If they can take that, they force the French to surrender. And then, even with the Americans coming in, we'd have to take terms.
I don't know. No, it is too far, even with 1 million extra men. No. I think it's far more likely to go for the Channel Force, Dunkirk, Calais, Boulogne, maybe the railway yards at Amiens, Armentières, Hasbrook. If we can't move or supply our forces, we're paralysed.
And then?
Surrender. We'd have no choice.
But surely the army would hold.
I don't think so, Cavendish, I really would, but to be honest, to be here for the present moment is both under strength and overstretched. Even if every man fought like a lion, I'm still not sure they'd hold. Get a message to Hay. Tell him, prepare for the worst.
Indeed, Minister.
Oh, and Cavendish, forget that tea. I think I only need something a little stronger.
The 19th of March, we were ordered to our preparation positions. So next day, we were told that on the 21st, the attack would start. We were in good spirits. We truly believed we could win this battle. But that night, 3 a.m., I left my dugout and looked around. The night was quiet. The skies were clear. I could see the stars shining and glistening. 9:15 after breakfast, I left my dugout. I could see nothing. There was a thick fog. How could we attack and insist? But we had our orders. I told my soldiers to hold on with one hand to the belt of the man in front as we advanced. After a while, we heard the guns firing behind us. We had, under cover of the fog, come out behind the British artillery positions. They did not know we was there. When I put my hand on the shoulder of a British officer, I said, "Cease fire!" They were stunned. Major Hartwig Pullman, 36th Prussian Division.
We did as much defence work as possible and waited for them to come. And then they'd come and we'd get the order, after we killed a few, to retire. We were retiring and retiring. We were never still. Lieutenant Aldrich Burke, 2nd Battalion, Devonshire Regiment.
As I was walking down the road, a-feeling fine and lucky, oh, a recruiting sergeant came up to me, said he'd look fine in khaki, oh. For the king, he is in need of men, come read this proclamation, oh. A life in Flanders for you then would be a fine vacation, oh. That may be so, says I to he, but tell me, Sergeant dearie, oh, if I had a pack stuck up on my back, would I look fine and cheery, oh? For the army'll train and drill you until they had you one of the Frenches, oh. It might be warm in Flanders, but it's drafty in the trenches, oh. The sergeant smiled and winked his eye, his smile was most provoking, oh. He twiddled and twirled his wee moustache, says he, you're only joking, oh. But the sandbags are so warm and high, the wind you won't feel blowing, oh. I've been to the colleen passing by, says I, but what if it's snowing, oh. Come rain or hail or wind or snow, I'm not going out to Flanders, oh. There's fighting in Dublin to be done, let your sergeants and your commanders go. Let Englishmen fight English wars, it's really time they started, oh. I saluted the sergeant a very good night, there and then we parted, oh.
My aim had been nothing less than complete victory, the destruction of the Huns' ability to wage war. But some of the reports that I've been getting...
The latest reports, General Hay.
Well, this is most unacceptable. What's happening to Byng's 3rd Army in the north and Gough's 5th Army?
Well, the 3rd are just about holding. But the 5th are retreating, sir. In good order, but they're being forced back.
They spent too much time sitting in the trenches. They've forgotten how to fight.
With the utmost respect, sir. They lack the numbers. The Germans have more troops, more guns.
Yes, well, we must hold the line.
Regardless of loss, sir.
Regardless of loss.
But we lost 7,500 men to the first artillery bombardment. Thousands more since.
Well, the Germans are weakening, they're overstretched. In any case, we must be prepared to resume the offensive at any time.
We have too few men, sir. And we've lost tanks, artillery and supplies to the German advance.
What about the reinforcements I asked for from the French?
General Bretagne's refused, sir.
What?
The French are scared that the Germans will take Paris.
God damn, man. God. Well, telegraph the War Office and get a message to General Foch. We must have those men. We cannot allow the Germans to drive a wedge between our forces.
Sir.
What other reserves do we have?
Well, Pershing's Americans haven't arrived at the front, but soon, sir. Oh, there's some new fellows from Ireland. The 1st Inniskillings have just arrived.
The Irish? Ha! Badly trained, ill-disciplined, a wild lot.
You make them sound like animals, sir.
Yes, well, the question is, can they fight?
But then you just got off the trains. Most of them haven't eaten since they left England 2 days ago.
Yes, well, a mad dog is always at its most dangerous when it's hungry. Move them up immediately.
Very good, sir.
broken into a bit of a lull.
Aye. Nice, ain't it?
Peaceful.
Sniper! I'd keep your heads down if I were you. Looks like we've been fighting a bit too well and got ahead of ourselves.
Hey, what's that over there, Sarge?
What's what?
I can hear somebody shouting.
There's a man in that shell hole over there.
Where?
Do you not see him there?
Hey, what's he saying now? Get back, you bloody fools! Is he one of our boys, do you think?
Can't tell from here.
No.
Too far away.
Do you think he bought in the last attack?
What does he want? Any help then?
I think he's a saying to get the Helvick out of here.
Jesus! It's easier said than done.
Hey, what? Speak up there, lad. He's saying we're drawing fire to get the bloody flag down.
Ted, get that bloody flag down! Seamus, you're quickest on your pens. Get back to HQ and tell the artillery to save their shells for Jerry. Would you, and to raise their sights a bit?
Back through that lot.
Aye, son.
And on my own?
Now is it for us to give ground when we come so close to the prize?
No, I see that. Well, all right then, I'll do it.
Bring us back a couple of wee girls with you.
I'll do my best.
Good luck there, Seamus.
Good luck, son.
Sarge,
Aye.
the last one got the bridge.
Oh.
Does that mean we're cut off then?
It does not. I'll swim for it!
Good lad, give yourselves a treat. That'll be the first bath he's had in a year.
I think he's gone on for Sarge.
Right, who's going to be next? Come on, someone's got to go.
I wouldn't mind a swim there, Sarge.
Good lad, Jacko. And tell him there's hundreds of us here stuck up on the bridge.
Will do.
And Jacko,
Sarge?
take care of yourself, lad.
Will do, Sarge.
Right.
Jacko, good luck.
Lord be damned. Must we do the 100 yards in?
Now, if he's been shot, I'll kill him.
I think he has, Sarge.
Right, come on. We better stick together and stay in one spot. Well, they started shelling for the next attack.
Go on.
You're bloody mad, English, or else you think. Come on, we gotta get out of here.
Where are we gonna go?
Now, isn't that a question? Come on, lad. Up.
Don't shoot!
Don't
shoot!
Comrade! Comrade! Well, that's it then, lad.
It's Sarge?
Well, it's not too bad.
No.
Well, at least we're out of the war now, son.
That'll be all right. I'll be seeing you then, Sarge.
I'll be seeing you, son.
Well, how do you do now, young Willie McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside and rest for a while in the warm summer sun? I've been walking all day and I'm nearly done. Well, I see by your gravestone you were only 19 when you joined the great fallen of 1916. Well, I hope you died well and I hope you died clean. Oh, Willie McBride, was it slow and obscene? Did they beat the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly? Did they sound the dead march as they lowered you down? Did the band sound the last Coulsdon chorus? Did they pipe the flowers of the forest? And did you leave a wife or a sweetheart behind? In some faithful heart is your memory enshrined. And though you died back in 1960, in that faithful heart you're forever 19. Or are you a stranger without even a name, enclosed forever behind a glass frame? In an old photograph, torn and tattered and stained, fading to yellow in a brown leather frame. Did they beat the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly? Did they sound the dead march as they lowered you down? Did the band sound the last Coulsdon chorus? Did they pipe the flowers of the forest? Now the sun beats down on the green fields of France. There's a warm summer breeze makes the red poppies dance. The trenches, they vanish now under the plough. There's no gas, there's no barbed wire, no guns firing now. But here in this graveyard, it's still no man's land. The countless white crosses in mute witness stand to man's blind indifference to his fellow man, and a whole generation that were butchered and damned. Did they beat the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly? Did they sound the dead march as they lowered you down? Did the band sound the last Coulsdon chorus? Did they pipe the flowers of the forest? Now Willie McBride, I can't help wondering why. Do all those that lie here know why they did die? And did they believe when they answered the call? Did they really believe that this war would end war? For the sorrow, the suffering, the glory, the pain, the killing and the dying, it was all done in vain. For young Willie McBride, oh, and again, and again and again and again and again, did they beat the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly? Did they sound the dead march as they lowered you down? Did the band sound the last Coulsdon chorus? Did they pipe the flowers of the forest? Did they beat the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly? Did they sound the dead march as they lowered you down? Did the band sound the last Coulsdon chorus? Did they pipe the flowers of the forest?
The 9th of April, 1918.
Jack's finished his basic training. It was supposed to be 3 months, but it's been cut short because they're so short of men at the front. I saw him off at the station today. He still had a bit of swagger about him, but I could see in his eyes he was scared, though he tried not to show it in front of his mates. Can't fool his mum, though, and it worried me a bit. Lord knows when I shall see him again.
The 15th of April, 1918.
No news from Jack yet, but I suppose no news is good news. I bumped into Margaret today. I swear, if she says,
How proud you must be of your Jack.
one more time, I'll swing for her. She's never had kids. What does she know?
29th of April, 1918.
Finally, a letter from Jack. He said,
It's not too bad, Mum. The lads are a good bunch. Thanks for your parcel. The socks you need to keep my feet nice and warm. Good job too, as much as my elbows in mud. The baccy's nice to smoke when I've got a few minutes rest, which ain't that often. Glad Dad's well. Send them my love. And to you and Grandad too.
Next, let's discuss patient number 43, shall we? Mr. William, where is it? William Parsons, yeah. Admitted in July of last year, dismissed by his commanding officer, failed to engage in combat during heavy showing. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. William came to us with occasional bouts of blindness, insomnia, and an extreme facial ticking on the right-hand side. But he has been responding well to treatment.
Ah, good. Let's see. 3 hours a day, massage and exercise. Course of electrolysis. 6 months of hypnosis and talking therapy. Well, I'd have to say I think he's had sufficient time to restore himself. Would you say he's fit to be discharged, Doctor?
Well, I would say he needs at least another month, sir.
This ticking of his, will it affect his ability to shoot, would you say?
With due respect, sir, it's more than just ticking. He's recovering from a deep psychological trauma. His case is complex, sir. I really don't think it'd be beneficial to be firing a gun at this.
He hasn't gone soft in your care, has he, Doctor? Really? I mean, I know these talking therapies can be, frankly, indulgent. I mean, we do not want them to dwell too long on emotional weaknesses. We must operate with the strictest dignity and a focus on discipline, sir. This is a man's ward, not a knitting, sir.
I would not use the word soft, sir. This condition is the product of exposure to extreme stress and strain. I really don't think it'd be beneficial to send him back to the front. He would suffer permanent damage. I really don't think...
And the review board and I have made our decision, and we believe he is fit to return to his regiment, Doctor. It would be a shame, would it not, to deny the man a chance to redeem his reputation and his honour? Would it not, Doctor?
Yes, sir.
Good. Next, patient 27, Mr. Thomas Forrest.
Sir.
I've finished my writing, nurse.
Well, that's wonderful, Will. May I read it?
Well, I don't know if it's any good.
Don't be silly, Will. Your writing is always good. Do you want to do the honours, or shall I?
You read it. And wait till you're alone. Then tell me you loved it tomorrow when you see me, no matter the truth.
Well, then I might as well tell you now. I've loved it.
You're too kind. Nurse, my review today. Do you think I might get to go home soon? You see, I've written to Mum, but she hasn't replied. It's my brother's birthday tomorrow. And if only I could just see them. Or maybe they could visit.
Oh, well, I'm sure Dr. Green will have news for you tomorrow. Now, it's time for your rest.
Leave the light on, please, Mary.
Of course, Will.
Man.
You wanted to see me, Doctor?
Oh, yes, Mary, thank you very much. It's about William. The review board suggested that he would be released in a month's time.
Well, that's wonderful news. Shall I inform his mother to come and collect him?
He's being released back to the army, Mary. Back to the front.
What?
They need the men.
What? But he can't even hold his fork straight and he still jumps when I can't.
Which reminds me, would you just mind checking John's board, please? Because I noticed that Madeline was giving him Bill's breakfast tray this morning.
Well, what did the doctor say? Did you fight them on it?
And that Ward A is due a review next week.
He thinks we're going to send him home. Home!
That is enough, Mary. These doctors are professionals. And you are just a nurse. If you're a nurse that wants a job tomorrow, you'll remember that when the superintendent tells you.
What will we tell him? And his family?
They haven't responded to his letters. They haven't been to visit. I think we know very well what his family thinks. Besides, it is a great honour to be given a second chance to prove yourself as a man. You wouldn't understand as a woman. Our job here is to cure them, nothing more. We have done a good thing for William. We should be proud. A good thing.
But...
That will be enough, nurse.
Yes, doctor. Of course. He wrote this earlier today. I thought you might like to read it.
I watched the white dawn gleam to the thunder of hidden guns. I hear the hot shells scream through skies as sweet as a dream, when the silver dawn grapevines, and a stabbing of light scorches the virginal wines. But I feel in my being the old, high sense by the thrill, and I thank the gods that the dawn is beautiful still.
When night falls dark, we creep in silence to our dead. We dig a few feet deep and leave them there to sleep. And blood at night is red, yea, even at night, and the dead man's face is white. I dry my hands, that are also trained to kill. And I look to the stars, for the stars are beautiful still.
The 5th of July, 1918.
A letter came from the army today.
We regret to inform you that your son, Private Jack Frederick Williams, 10th Battalion London Regiment, has been shot and wounded. He is presently being cared for in a military hospital in France, but will return home for 2 weeks' rest on the 11th of July, 1918.
My Jack's been shot. They didn't say where or what his injury was. But at least he's coming home.
The 10th of July, 1918.
Jack will be home tomorrow. I can't wait to see him. I've cleaned the house, baked his favourite cake. I've even got coal in the front room fire in his honour. We're going to have such a homecoming for him.
The 11th of July, 1918.
I was so excited to see my Jack today, but nothing could prepare me for the shock. My word, it was a sorry sight. Shaking and trembling and so drawn. I thought a warm fire and a nice cuppa would make him feel better, but he just sat there, staring into space, rocking to and fro. He didn't seem to know where he was. I tucked him up in bed early. Hopefully he'll feel a little brighter tomorrow.
The 12th of July, 1918.
We had such a terrible night last night. Jack woke us all with his screaming. We found him huddled in his bed, sweating and moaning. I didn't know what to do with him.
The 19th of July, 1918.
There was little change in Jack. We're woken night after night to his screams. God knows what my poor boy saw over there to begin him such nightmares.
21st of July, 1918.
Another letter from the army. Jack is to report to the station and return to the front on the 25th. That's only 4 days. But he's not fit. Did they see that? And they sent him home. Today I tried talking to him, as he seemed calmer. But he begged me not to let them take him again. I tried to talk some sense into him, telling him that if he didn't go back, he'd be done for desertion. I told him how proud I was of him, that he had to be brave. The war must surely be near at its end.
The 25th of July, 1918.
I had to say goodbye to my Jack today. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. He looked so small and frightened, jumping when the whistle went and the train let off steam. I don't know how he's going to cope.
For all the ground gained, for all the seeming battles won, these were hollow victories for the Germans. The Allies were bloodied, but never broken, and the cost in men had been high, too high. If in March a victory had seemed within their grasp, by April it was slipping away, and as spring moved to summer, the balance moved in favour of the Allies for the last time. Now the American troops were coming to the front in large numbers for the first time. And on the 8th of August, the first of a series of Allied attacks were begun that would ultimately end in German defeat. Morale amongst the exhausted and depleted German forces was low. They had lost their best men. Their fuel-starved air force had lost control of the skies. And still, the orders came to fight on.
Another exciting experiment in McConaughey stew.
I've got some biscuits to soften up.
What a treat. Here, found some potatoes. Some aren't even mouldy.
Go try them in.
Yeah, Lou's dugout. Here, also got these. I can't wait till our tour of the front is up. All right, lads, drink for one more? As long as you're mucking. What you got? Glad you asked. Oh.
Where'd you get that?
Well, Luke sent me up HQ with a message for the colonel. Wouldn't you know it, but I had to go down the cellar to find him.
Glorious!
Glorious! One bottle of beer between the four of us. Thank God that there are no more of us, 'cause none of us could drink it on its own. Glorious! Glorious! One tin hat between the four of us. Thank God that there are no more of us, 'cause only one can wear it at a time. Glorious!
Hey!
Glorious! One gas mask between the four of us. Thank God that there are no more of us, 'cause Jerry then can have us on the run. Glorious! Hey! Glorious! One brothel bed between the four of us.
Right, let's go room for one more.
Bleeding hell, Smithy! You always have to ruin it, don't you?
What? I brought carrots and bully beef from the canteen.
How are five of us supposed to share a brothel bed? I wouldn't want to share a flea pit with you. What you got, Smithy?
What have you been up to anyway, Smith?
Nothing.
Nothing. I'm just waiting for a letter from home.
Well, given the situation, the post office, it's only after the war.
Ah, my Christmas Ben.
Yeah. Coffee will make you feel better.
What is it?
Earthset's coffee,
Yeah, but what is it?
acorn, chicory root, a little bit of sawdust.
Sawdust and acorn coffee.
Just like Mother used to make.
You know, I haven't had a meal where I felt really full since 1916.
Ha! That was the last time I was on leave.
When Kaiser hears about this, he'll be sure to change everything.
Yeah, maybe the old Kaiser, eh?
We want to have the old Kaiser Wilhelm back.
We want to have the old Kaiser Wilhelm back. The one with the beard, the very long beard, the one with the beard, the old grey beard. Our parents rave about the good old times. It's so long ago, the imperial age. Maybe they were better, the good old times. When Grandpa calls it Grandma. They want to have the old Kaiser Wilhelm back. They want to have the old Kaiser Wilhelm back. One with the beard, the very long beard, the one with the beard, the old grey beard.
Better not let the overlookman hear you singing that.
Come, sit. Coffee?
I'll pass it once. I had some muddy water earlier.
Anything for the pot?
Well, I have some turnip shavings if that's any good.
Ah, it's like Christmas all over again.
Since the war must almost be over.
Any day soon.
Any day now, I'm telling you. Smithy, we've been stuck here for 4 long years. What makes you think we're going to be going to Berlin anytime soon?
Well, it stands to reason, doesn't it? The Turks are on their way out. Austro-Hungary's falling apart. The Germans are on their own. I was reading an article in the Daily Mail the other day about Herr Bellon. He said, "Christy, Smithy, you'll believe any old rubbish you."
What are you reading there, Cook? Oh, I got a letter from my Elsie. They've started rationing meat and cheese and butter now.
Oh, poor dears. Russian meat Farmer. Apparently, she has terrible pains in her hands, and they've turned yellow from the chemicals in the armament factory. She wants to know how her hands are going.
Well, you'll find out how my hands are if you don't give me my letter back.
Fondest loving kisses from your loving little girl, Elsie.
Right, that's it. Sit down, cook, before a sniper sights you. Farmer, give him his letter back, or I will.
I was only having a little fun, wasn't I?
Yeah, well, that's all of a bit of fun. Take long walk in no man's land.
In no man's land. That is, that smell.
Smell?
Oh. Food. Meat. Cooking meat.
It's the English. I heard them singing earlier.
I don't remember the last time I had meat.
According to the Kaiser, that was only yesterday.
I wish I had half as much meat as the Kaiser said I did.
Yeah.
You would. Hey, there's sure the English when we think of them and their bully beef.
French and Russians, they matter not.
A blow for a blow and a shot for a shot. We love them not, we hate them not. We hold them by a skeleton boss, this gate. We will never let go of our hate. We have but only one hate. We love as one, we hate as one. We have one foe and one alone. England, England.
England? What are they singing about? Have you not heard that before? It's Joey's hymn of hate. They're singing about how much they hate England and are calling God to strafe us.
Strafe?
It's German. It means punish.
Well, that's not nice, is it?
Well, it's not very nice at all.
Yeah, I know, but we don't have any songs like that, do we? Certainly not. And if we did, ours would be funny.
Yeah, like Brits! Get a load of this! My old man's a guardsman, he fought at the Battle of Mons. He killed a dozen Germans with only a couple of bombs. The boss fought bloody hard, the boss fought bloody well. The boss had pushed us back, hey, to the edge of hell. One day here, another there, around the corner, and the local son with his head hanging up was crying out for water. And when he left the trench that night, the boss, they were all dead. He nicked a spiky helmet to put upon his head. Hey!
On your feet, you bunch of Allegro's!
Yes, sir!
Taylor, HQ!
Yes, sir!
Now!
What are you men doing down here neglecting your duties?
The enemy is cooking their evening meal.
The English are preparing their food.
Well, good luck to them, sir!
So we, sir.
A hot meal is quintessential to morale. Would you agree, Private?
The English depend upon hot food for their morale.
I suppose so, sir. Would you like some stew, sir?
For us too, sir.
Then if we were to deny the enemy their hot meal, their morale would suffer, correct?
So, if we interrupt the preparations for the Englishman's meal, their morale will plummet.
I agree, sir.
Jawohl! Sir.
Let's jump to it, Private. You men, up on that parapet and open fire immediately.
Then you men should fire upon the English trenches immediately.
What about our morale, sir?
What about our hot meal, sir?
Less of that conchy talk, Private. You can eat dinner in Berlin.
Plenty of time for eating. When England is defeated.
Sir!
God heard the embattled nations sing and shout. God strafe England, God save the king. God this, God that, God the other thing. Good God, said God, I've got my work cut out.
The 19th of September, 1918.
At last, I've heard from my Jack. It's not much, just the standard postcode with a few blocked out words.
I am well. I have received your parcel. A letter will follow at the first opportunity.
The 12th of October, 1918.
telegram today. I barely had the courage to open it. Would it be my Frank? Or my Jack?
We regret to inform you that your son, Private Jack Frederick Williams, 10th Battalion, London Regiment, was killed in France on the 2nd of October 1918. Stop.
That was it. Nothing else. I don't even know where his body is.
October 1918, 4 weeks before the end of hostilities. 17-year-old Thomas Ricketts of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment becomes the youngest soldier of the Great War to win the Victoria Cross for gallantry. What was this boy soldier doing there, 2,500 miles from his home, a remote fishing community on the rocky shores of faraway Newfoundland?
And what can his story tell us about the experience of millions of men from Britain's colonies and dominions, 300,000 of whom lost their lives fighting for king against Kaiser?
Newfoundland was a British dominion with a small population, mainly of Scots and Irish descent, not part of Canada until 1949. When war broke out, a volunteer battalion was quickly formed, nicknamed the Blue Putties for the distinctive leggings. The Royal Newfoundland Regiment's recruitment depot was the CLB, or Church Lads Brigade in St John's, capital of Newfoundland.
The regiment shipped across the Atlantic in the steamer Florizel, taking part in the Suvla Bay landings at Gallipoli in 1915. The Newfoundlanders sustained serious losses, but official reports recorded they
stood up well.
On withdrawal from Gallipoli in January 1916, the Blue Putties transferred to the Western Front. In April 1960, they went into the line at Beaumont-Hamel, facing experienced German soldiers who had been fortifying their positions for more than a year.
The Battle of the Somme began at dawn on the 1st of July 1916, with 60 battalions, 50,000 men, committed to the opening infantry assault. The Blue Putties, the only Empire battalion in the attack, were initially held in reserve, but the leading assault foundered on the German barbed wire in no man's land.
At 8:45 a.m, the Newfoundland Regiment received orders to advance from their trenches 250 yards behind the British front line and out of sight of the enemy.
But the trenches leading to the front line were clogged with dead and wounded and under constant shelling. Movement towards through these trenches proved impossible.
So the Newfoundlanders were ordered over the top. To the piercing call of whistles all along the line, the Blue Putties fixed bayonets and clambered from their trenches.
Breasting the skyline 100 yards behind the British front line, they were now the only troops moving on the battlefield, clearly visible to the Germans.
The Germans concentrated all their machine gun, rifle and artillery fire on this new target.
Within 10 minutes, most of the Newfoundland regiment were dead, dying or wounded. Most didn't even make it as far as no man's land.
Of the 780 men that went forward that day, only 70 survived unscathed. All 22 officers and 688 other ranks were either killed, missing or wounded. A casualty rate of 90%. The hardest hit of all the battalions in action on the 1st of July. To all intents and purposes, the Royal Newfoundland Regiment had been wiped out.
After the battle, Major General Sir Henry de Beauvoir de Lille wrote,
The advance of the Newfoundland Regiment at Beaumont-Hamel was a magnificent display of trained and disciplined valour. Its assault only failed because dead men can advance no further.
The regiment was gradually rebuilt with fresh drafts of men from Newfoundland. Tommy Ricketts enlisted in September 1916, claiming to be 18. He was just 15 years old. His brother George was already on the Western Front, one of the few survivors of the advance of Beaumont-Hamel.
Over the following 2 years, young Thomas Ricketts became a veteran of numerous assaults and defensive actions. He was wounded, but survived. His brother George was not so lucky, killed at the Battle of Cambrai in 1917.
By September 1980, the Germans' final roll of the dice, the huge spring offensive known as the Kaiserschlacht, had been repulsed, and the Allies had broken out in a massive counterpunch.
On the 14th of October, the British launched the Battle of Cambrai. As the Royal Newfoundland Regiment advanced past Neerhof, they came under point-blank shelling and withering machine gun fire from a German artillery position. The entire advance became pinned down, and the Royal Newfoundland Regiment threatened with annihilation for the second time.
Tommy Ricketts and Lance Corporal Matthew Brazil volunteered to take a Lewis gun and attempt to outflank the enemy battery, some 600 yards to the front.
Moving in short 10-yard rushes, they sprinted ahead, Ricketts firing the Lewis gun from his hip before dropping to reload. At 300 yards from the enemy battery, their ammunition ran out.
Under the heaviest machine gun fire, Ricketts doubled back, picked up several more heavy containers of ammunition, and dashed back again to the Lewis gun. The pair then advanced again, driving the enemy gun teams back into a farmyard.
While Brazil gave covering fire, Ricketts entered the farmyard, cleared the buildings, and single-handedly captured 5 field guns, 4 heavy machine guns, and 8 prisoners. Most of the German gun crews had already been killed.
After the war, Ricketts stated that at the moment he decided to make his suicidal return dash for more ammunition, he thought of his brother George.
I was determined that this time I would get them, or they would get me.
On January the 19th, 1919, Ricketts received his Victoria Cross from the King at Sandringham. In his diary the next day, the King recorded,
Yesterday, I gave the BC to Private Ricketts, Newfoundland Regiment, who is only 17 and a half now. A splendid boy.
A boy. A veteran. At 17. The youngest soldier of the Great War to win the Victoria Cross for gallantry. None would dispute Thomas Ricketts' courage. As few would dispute the gallantry and sacrifice of his countrymen, who fought and died so very far from home, commemorated in this song by Newfoundland band, Great Big Sea.
Two recruiting sergeants came to the CLB for the sons of the merchants to join the Blue Puttees. So all hands enlisted, 500 young men. Come you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. They crossed the broad Atlantic in the brave Florizan, and on the sands of Suvla they entered into hell. And on those bloody beaches the first of them fell. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. And it's over the mountains and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Puttees. You'll fight the honey floaters and Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. The call came from London for the last July drive. To the trenches with the regiment, prepare yourselves to die. And roll call next morning, but a handful survive. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. And it's over the mountains and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Puttees. You'll fight the honey Flanders and at Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. The stone men on Water Street still cry for the day. The pride of this city went marching away. 1,000 men slaughtered just to hear the King say, Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. And it's over the mountain and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Puttees. You'll find the hunting flag then come, follow me.
Just after 5 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918, in a railway carriage deep in the forest of Compiègne, 40 miles north of Paris, the armistice was signed. The surrender of Germany, following the surrender of the Allies Austro-Hungary, Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire, meant the fighting in Western Europe would be over. A time was agreed for the formal end of hostilities. 12 noon in Germany or 11 a.m. in Paris. The war would finish in just 6 hours. And in that short time, nearly 11,000 more men became casualties, with over 2,500 deaths, the last deaths of the war.
Hey up, lads. There's another one.
Oh, dang, I lost again. This sure ain't my day.
Henry, I'm pretty certain that none of us can count this as one of our better ones.
Hey, come on. You lost how you said fair and square. Hey, up.
Yeah, all right. Hey, come on, fella. We don't bite.
Not anymore.
Sit down, lad.
What is this place?
Well, to be honest, lad, we don't rightly know.
Oh, we think it is some kind of, what is the word?
A waiting room.
Ah, oui. A waiting room. Ready for us to move on.
Move on to there?
Well, ain't that the $64,000 question, son?
We're dead, aren't we?
I'm afraid so, lad, that we are. So, let's not stand on ceremony. My name's George, Private George Allison, 5th Royal Irish Lancers, and this here is August.
Auguste Trebechon, 163rd Infantry Division.
Henry Gunther, 313th Infantry Regiment, Baltimore Reserve.
Thomas. Lieutenant Peter Thomas of the... I can't seem to remember.
Don't worry, lad. That's all over and done with now.
Just the four of us. I thought there would be more. My friends, my compatriots.
Well, you see, I've been thinking about that.
And?
Well, I think we're special.
Special how?
I think we're the last.
The last? The last what?
The last to die. In the war. Maybe the last to die in any war.
Mon Dieu.
Are you sure?
What? No, of course not. I'm just a foot slugger like the rest of you. I'm not a priest or a philosopher or something. It's just a feeling I've got, that's all. I mean, I was here first, and I've had longer to think, that's all.
What happened to you?
Shot. Don't even know where it came from. On patrol just outside of Mons. Now, the funny thing is, the first scrap I got into over here were in Mons, right back at the start of it all.
You were here back then?
Oh yes, about the BDF back in 14. Fought all the way through Ypres, Lons, Cambrai. When I heard the news this morning about the surrender, I thought to myself, I've only bloody made it. Then someone said they'd seen some squareheads and it... no offence, Mike.
None.
Anyway, so they sent us out to see what was going on in this here wood and... Well, you see, I asked the sergeant what the time was. And he said, it's 9:30. An hour and a half to go.
Our division was ordered to attack the German positions on the far side of the river Meuse.
When was this?
This morning?
Why did they do that? Surely they knew that soon the war would be over.
I do not know.
Our artillery boys were still firing at you lot this morning too. They got all this ammunition left, you see, and it's a lot easier to keep firing at you than it is to take it home.
The crossings, they had been destroyed in the night. So, our engineers, they built a plank bridge across the river. Also, it was foggy, which was good, because we could not be seen. We began to cross the bridge, but it is not so good, and some of our men, they fell in the river, and they were drowned. Finally, we make it to the other side. Mon captain, he gives me a message to deliver, to carry up with me, très important. We begin to advance up the slope, towards the railway line, and the German positions beyond. Then, opened fire. There was almost nowhere to hide. I made it up as far as the railway line before I was hit. I died there. It was 2 minutes before 11. I was still carrying the message I had to deliver.
What does it say?
I do not think I can tell you this, not even now.
Oh, come on!
Very well, but it is top secret, n'est-ce pas?
Yeah, all right. Cross my heart and hope to, oh, whatever. Muster, 11:30. Hot soup will be served. Is that it?
That is it?
Some kind of code?
No.
Well, this ain't vital. This ain't vital at all.
That's just this, Henry. The message weren't important. Nor the attack, neither.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I get it. Big joke.
So what about you then?
Me?
What's your story?
Oh.
Well, it was my own goddamn fault.
How?
Well, you see, me and the boys from Company A, we were advancing on this French town called de Montbalier or something.
Chaumont d'Ambilliers. I know it. I knew it.
Yeah, anyway, so we're advancing on this, and we go up the road, and there's a roadblock up there, manned by some crabs with a machine gun.
Yeah, no offense taken.
What?
Please, continue.
Well, anyway, our company sergeant, Ernie Williams, he said, boys, get off the road, get under cover. But I didn't.
Why?
I'm mad, I guess. I mean, I started the war as a company sergeant myself, but I wrote some letters home with some stuff I shouldn't have said, and the censors picked up on it, so I got busted back to private. So yeah, I'm mad. I'm mad at the army, I'm mad at the Germans, I'm mad at me.
And what did you do?
Well, I fixed my bayonet and I charged the position.
And they shot you.
No, they shouted at me. No, there was a guy with a flag or a shirt waving it like this, and I couldn't understand what he said. And then my own guys were going, Hank, come on back, it's only a minute to go.
But you didn't.
No, I didn't, no. I raised my rifle and started to fire. I must have got off a couple of shots before they opened up with the machine gun. I don't blame them. I didn't give them much choice.
But why only? Why? Georges and myself, our fate, it was made by others. But you?
I just guess I had something to prove. It was coming to the end of the war, and I didn't want to go home a goddamn buck private.
And now, you will not go home at all.
I guess not.
What about you, Dixon?
There is not much to tell, my friend. My memory is still quite cloudy. I do not know where we were. We had a house. It had the roof and most of the windows. There's only 1 2 miles around its head. We received orders this morning about the armistice, so we were biding our time. Hartman had brewed up some acorn coffee. It was foul, but it tasted somehow better this morning. It was 11. We toasted to peace. It was the end of the war. It was going home.
So what happened? All the fighting had finished.
Sometime after 11, when Bruno heard voices outside. He looked out the window and there was a squad of American soldiers coming down the road towards us. At first we were wary, because then we thought, well, the war is over, there's no need to worry. They were due to pull out so they could take the house. And so as the officer in charge, I stepped out, unarmed, to meet them.
And?
One of them, young, nervous looking, he saw me and fired.
But the armistice, it was in force.
Perhaps they'd not heard. Perhaps they had and didn't believe it. In any case, here I am.
I'm sorry about that, son.
We all are.
May we?
But if, as you say, I'm the last, the very last, then perhaps our last is with
If this truly was the war to end all wars, then we're the last to die. You know, are the women any king or politician or general, thank God.
No more fighting.
No.
That would be a good end.
Aye.
Hey guys, I think our wait is over. Thanks for your time. It's been swell.
Gentlemen, it's been an honor.
Hey, George, do you believe it? No more war?
I don't know. I hope so. I really do. Because if we haven't learned from this, we'll never bloody learn.
When I was on horseback, wasn't I pretty? When I was on horseback, wasn't I gay? Wasn't I pretty when I entered the city? And met with my downfall on the very last day. 6 jolly soldiers to carry my coffin. It's 6 jolly soldiers to march by my side. 6 jolly soldiers take a bunch of red roses, all for to smell them as we go along. So beat the drum slowly and play the pipe slowly and play up the dead march as we go along. And there at my graveside, lay me down easy. I am a young soldier that never done wrong. When I was on horseback, wasn't I pretty? When I was on horseback, wasn't I gay? Wasn't I pretty when I entered the city in 1918 on the very last day?
As the last gunshots rang out and peace finally settled on the bloodied fields of Europe, there was one thing in the mind of millions of soldiers: let's go home. Volunteer or conscript, each had signed up for the duration. As far as they were concerned, the duration had been reached. Even the professionals, the career soldiers, wanted leave. This didn't come as any surprise to the government. They'd been planning for it since 1917, but they couldn't just let everybody go at once. They needed to release them slowly, letting just enough men go as the economy could cope with. The last thing they wanted was vast numbers of unemployed, disenchanted men with military training on the streets of Britain. They'd seen what mass social unrest had caused in Germany and Russia. That couldn't be allowed to happen here. A policy of last in, first out was implemented. In some eyes it made sense, as those who'd only recently left employment would be more likely to be able to return to it. But it enraged millions. The soldiers who'd been fighting for their country for years felt betrayed. Rioting broke out in Calais as troops rebelled against the unfair treatment. At one point, 6,000 mutineers imprisoned their officers, and demanded to see a general to negotiate their immediate release. Winston Churchill became Secretary of State for War on the 10th of January 1919, and one of his first actions was to scrap the existing demobilisation rules and bring in new ones. Now, it was first in, first out. Anyone who had served since 1914 or 1915 was moved to the front of the queue, and the British sense of fair play had been satisfied.
The 19th of January, 1990.
Jack's friend Ronald visited today. He'd just been demobbed. He was fresh off the train. He looked so nervous. He sat me down, said he had something to tell me that had been on his mind for months, and that he didn't quite know where to start.
The 20th of January, 1990.
Couldn't finish writing yesterday. Couldn't take in what Ronald had told me.
I don't quite know how to tell you this, Mrs. Williams. Someone's going to have to come out and say it. Your Jack weren't killed in action. He was shot by members of his own regiment. He weren't right when he came back from leave. We could all see it. He didn't seem to know who he was or where he was. This one night, he was on guard duty, you see, and when his relief turned up, Jack weren't there. So they raised the alarm and sent out a search party. And 2 days later, huddled in a shell hole, shivering and moaning. Lost his rifle too. They court-martialed him, condemned him as a deserter, sentenced him to death. Death by firing squad.
Poor Ronald broke down then. He looked at me and said,
You weren't no deserter, Miss Williams. He was just scared like the rest of us. He didn't know what he was doing.
The 31st of January, 1990.
I haven't been able to think straight these past few weeks. So that's why I received no medals or news of my boy. They think my son was a deserter, a coward. He didn't deserve to be honoured for any part he played in this war. What will I tell my Frank when he comes home? How can I tell him my son had to face a firing squad? How am I to face Margaret, knowing what I know? She's bound to ask why his name isn't on the town memorial. Our family will be shunned. Our Jack's memory will be all spoiled. I can't sleep, thinking of my poor boy, my dear Jack, lying there somewhere in a foreign land all alone, no family or friends to visit him. I refuse to be ashamed. He was my son, and I'm proud of him. So proud. It's the army that should hang its head. They sent a boy to fight a man's war. He wasn't fit for service. But they sent him back. He was sick, but they just ignored it.
The 15th of February, 1990.
Never. He was my dearest boy. My Jack. He fought and died for his king and country. But we can't speak about it. None of us can. Only the mothers whose sons were taken from them, like my Jack was, can understand. I have no way of knowing who they are, or finding them.
was one of the last countries to withhold pardons for men who were executed during World War I. In 1993, John Major emphasised to the House of Commons that pardoning these men would be an insult to all those who had given their lives honourably on the battlefield, and that they had all had a fair trial. However, in August 2006, the then Defence Secretary, Des Brown, reversed this decision. He stated that he did not want to second-guess the decisions made by commanders in the field, who were only doing their best to try and apply the rules and standards of the time. However, it would be better to acknowledge that injustices were clearly done in some cases, even if we do not know which, and to further acknowledge that all of these men, in fact, were victims of war. In 2007, the Armed Forces Act 2006 came into force, allowing the soldiers to be pardoned posthumously.
On Saturday, June the 21st, 1919, I had to be up early. We were going to take a school trip, a cruise on the Flying Kestrel to visit the surrendered German fleet. The thought of sailing up to them made us boys almost sick with excitement. When at last we came face to face with the fleet, some of the huge battleships made our little ship look ridiculous. Their decks were lined with German sailors who didn't seem very pleased to see us. Suddenly, without any warning, these enormous vessels began to list to port or starboard. Some keeled over completely and plunged headlong, their sterns lifted high out of the water. Out of the vents rushed steam and oil and air with a dreadful roaring hiss. And as we watched, awestruck and silent, the sea became littered for miles around with boats and hammocks, lifebelts and chests, and among it all, hundreds of men struggling for their lives. As we drew away from this nightmare scene, we watched the last great battleship slide down with keel upturned like some monstrous whale.
That was the voice of James Taylor, a pupil at Stromness Higher Grade School in the Orkney Islands. Between the 22nd and 24th of November 1918, 74 ships of the Imperial German fleet had been escorted to Scapa Flow in the Orkney Islands, to be held there until the final peace treaty was signed and their fates decided. The Germans had left a skeleton crew on each ship, stripped of ammunition and small arms. Confined to their ships, it was a lonely existence. Radios were removed and news was gleaned from 4-day-old newspapers. Despite being forbidden to fraternise, a working, if illicit, relationship was built up between the crews and their Royal Navy counterparts, who helped keep them supplied and delivered mail. Rear Admiral Ludwig von Reuter was in command of this ghost fleet, a Prussian aristocrat, both respected and popular with his men, with an unshakable belief in honour.
As 1919 wore on, the peace treaty negotiations reached a crisis point. On the 29th of May, the German government rejected the Allied peace terms, and the Allies responded by issuing a warning to Berlin demanding an acceptance of those terms, or on noon to 21st of June, the horror of the First World War would begin again. Rumours began to circulate of an Allied plot to seize the ships, and faced with the awful possibility that the fleet would be used against Germany when the hostilities resumed, von Reuter devised a plan that needed the Royal Navy's help to succeed.
On the 17th of June, the British sailors were asked to deliver letters to every one of the 74 German warships in Scapa Flow. This they duly did. The letters set out the actions needed to sink the ships and evacuate. In paragraph 11 of each letter, von Reuter stated his intentions. I will sink the ships if the enemy attempt to seize them without the consent of our government.
The morning of the 21st of June arrived, Midsummer's Day. The weather was good, the seas were calm. The Flying Kestrel, with its cargo of schoolchildren, prepared to leave Stromness to begin its tour of the Imperial German fleet. And as luck would have it, the British naval squadron, who had been guarding them for the last 6 months, left to take part in an exercise.
At 10:20, signal flags were raised on von Reuter's flagship, the Emden, saying, "Make paragraph 11, acknowledge." When all acknowledgements had been received, A further set of flags was sent up. Condition Z, Scuttle. And with that, across the fleet, the crews opened up valves and doors, and the sea rushed in.
The children who had been watching the coloured flags go up and down with fascination were now treated to an even bigger spectacle as the Imperial German High Seas Fleet began to slip beneath the waves. Sailors in life jackets began jumping off the ships into the sea. Others were piling into life rafts. At around 12:15, the battleship Friedrich der Grosse became the first to sink beneath the waves.
The handful of British small ships and destroyers left at Scapa Flow steamed from one battleship to another, trying desperately to stop the disaster going on all around them. Some panicked and shot a number of unarmed German sailors who refused to help stop the ships from sinking. The British battleships that had been sent on manoeuvres rushed back to assist, but were too late.
Of the 74 German ships at Scapa Flow, 52 were sunk.
Admiral Sidney Fremantle, officer commanding the British fleet at Scapa Flow, was furious. Hauling von Reuter onto the deck of his flagship, HMS Revenge, he accused him of cowardice and dishonourable conduct. He later admitted some sympathy for his German counterpart.
But von Reuter's actions need never have taken place. The German government had agreed to the treaty before the Allied ultimatum, but with only 4-day-old newspapers to go on, von Reuter simply didn't know.
The French were unhappy. The treaty was to divide the bulk of the German fleet between them, the British, and the Americans. Now, they'd get nothing.
The Germans were happy. This glorious act of defiance restored some much-needed pride to a navy still smarting from its ignominious surrender.
And the British were quietly pleased. They'd never been happy with the proposal to give the French and Americans a chance to compete with the Royal Navy's dominance of the seas. The loss of the German fleet suited them really rather well.
Did the British really deliver all those letters to the German fleet without ever thinking to open one or read the contents?
And why, after 7 months guarding this captured fleet, was the British fleet ordered to steam off on manoeuvres on the very morning that von Reuter was due to execute his plan, and just 2 days before the fate of the fleet was to be decided?
James Taylor and the other children of Stromness Higher Grade School had witnessed a unique dramatic event. Some of the younger children had thought it had been put on especially for them, but perhaps it was staged for a much bigger audience.
Our history is never as far away as you may think. Just a few hundred yards from where you're sitting now, they're building 675 new homes on the site of the old Cane Hill Hospital. Originally the 3rd Surrey County Pauper Lunatic Asylum, along with nearby Netherton, St Lawrence's, Wallingham Park and Banstead, Cane Hill was one of a cluster of asylums built to hold the multitudinous mad of Victorian London. Perhaps, back then, the clean air of these East Surrey hills was thought to be curative. Or perhaps, back then, we just had the space.
When Cane Hill opened in 1882, it had space for 1,000 patients. Within 5 years, it had been extended to hold 2,000. During the Great War, it started to receive a new type of patient, soldiers suffering with shell shock.
As early as December 1914, 10% of all officers and 4% of other ranks in the British Expeditionary Force were counted as mental or nervous shock casualties. Matters came to a head in July 1916, after the Battle of the Somme, when 40% of all casualties were shell-shocked, compounding the catastrophic loss of manpower.
It is a form of nervous breakdown characteristic of the present war, ascribed to a sudden or alarming physical event, such as witnessing a ghastly sight or a harrowing experience. The patient will appear nervy, unduly emotional and shaky. His sleep will be disturbed by bad dreams of the events he has been through. and even in his waking hours will be disturbed by the vivid recollection of those events. Dr. Aldrin Turner, War Office Medical Department, May 1915.
Rather than risk lunatics at the loose in their rear, the army ordered their rapid evacuation. Soldiers were sent to hastily opened neurological wards in military hospitals. Nurses ordered to feed them, wash them, and let them sleep, expecting them to recover.
But when more and more pale, trembling men did not recover, they began to transfer them to mental asylums. This mother writes of her son, consigned to the asylum in October 1917.
He broke a sofa at home thinking he was jumping over a trench. He's imaginary aeroplanes and whistles to his comrades when he believes Fritz is coming.
The first case to arrive at Cane Hill was Arthur Henry Daw on the 20th of March 1915. He was not the last. Many soldiers suffering acute nervous and mental shock were sent to Cane Hill. The hospital treated them and, when thought fit, discharged them.
But many did not recover. They stayed at Cane Hill, and they died there over the following decades.
Until 1950, all patients who died at Cane Hill were buried in the hospital grounds, on the north side of Portmores Road, near to the North Lodge. When the hospital finally closed in 1991, records revealed that nearly 6,000 people had been laid to rest there.
Buried with full military honours, in plots that were numbered but otherwise unmarked, the soldiers soon lay forgotten. Their names were not included in the debt of honour, the nation's memorial of record to the glorious dead of the Great War. For half a century and more, they were simply lost to memory.
In 1980, the Portmores Road burial site was sold off for housing development. An Act of Parliament passed to deconsecrate the land. Croydon Council was granted permission to exhume the human remains, provided
the moving or disposal of any remains found on the land will be treated with due care and consideration to both the deceased and their relatives.
thousands of bodies were disinterred. Their remains transferred to Mitcham Road Cemetery for cremation. The ashes scattered in the cemetery's garden of remembrance. No distinction was made between the soldiers' remains and those of other patients.
In 2009, Croydon Council placed a small memorial on this site. No names were included. This memorial was later stolen. It was around then that a campaign started. Some people felt that the forgotten soldiers of Cane Hill deserved to be accorded the same honour as all others that gave their lives, with their names properly memorialised.
Research revealed 2 plots in the Cane Hill Burial Register marked as service graves. Graves numbers 420 and 441 each contained 6 burials. Records of other plots were not found, but records of other shell-shocked servicemen were. There were 27 of them.
To qualify as a war grave, a man had to have died between the 4th of August 1914 and the 31st of August 1921. If discharged, cause of death had to be directly attributable to a man's service. If no medical or service records could be found, nothing could be done.
Fortunately, many of the Cane Hill men's records survived, and so began the painstaking task of submitting evidence to the Ministry of Defence. The records clearly showed that the men's deaths were as a result of their service. Many had been issued with the Silver War Badge, with the reason of discharge shown as sickness, the common euphemism for shell shock. Most of the names are now entered on the Commonwealth War Graves Commission's Debt of Honour. A war memorial was erected in Mitcham Road Cemetery in 2015.
Records for 9 of the men were lost in the Blitz of 1940, but the following have now been remembered.
Private Alfred Charles Cartwright, Grenadier Guards.
Private Edmund Catley, Royal Artillery.
Private Leonard Dobson, the Queen's Royal West Surrey Regiment.
Private Charles William Frey, the Middlesex Regiment.
Private Robert John Gibbons, Royal Army Medical Corps.
Private George John Groombridge, the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment.
Private Bertie Harvey, Royal Welsh Fusiliers.
Private George John Lehman, Royal Garrison Artillery.
Corporal George Charles Lawrence, Royal Flying Corps.
Private Alexander John Mackenzie, Northumberland Fusiliers.
Private William John Penny, the London Regiment.
Rifleman Samuel Schoolmount, King's Royal Rifle Corps.
Rifleman Richard Leonard Skinner, King's Royal Rifle Corps.
Driver Walter William Sutton, Army Service Corps.
Private Frederick Taylor, Somerset Light Infantry.
Private Robert Thomas, Army Service Corps.
Private George Robert Tulloch, Welsh Regiment.
Private Henry Albert Wilson, South Wales Borderers.
In July 2017, a local resident wrote, "How sad that these servicemen, shunned by society and labelled as lacking moral fibre, should suffer the final indignity of being exhumed and cremated along with 6,000 odd other burials at Canehill. Little was known then about what has become post-traumatic stress disorder, but it is so sad that our country sees fit to treat its soldiers in such a cavalier fashion. Thank you for finally acknowledging the sacrifice made by these men trapped in their shattered minds for many years. Peter Thomas."
Our history is never quite as far away as you may think. Sometimes its echoes come down to us, even across the passage of 100 years.
Now it's 2018. They are building furiously on Canehill once more. And so history marches on. We can no longer hear or begin to imagine the voices of those soldiers, trapped in their shattered minds, wandering the Gothic corridors of an asylum outside Coulsdon. But we do have the words of the war poet, Siegfried Sassoon, in his poem, Survivors.
No doubt they'll soon be well, the shock and strain having caused their stammering, disconnected talk. Of course they're longing to go out again, those boys with old scarred faces learning to walk. They'll soon forget their haunted nights, their count's objection to the ghosts of friends that died, their dreams that dripped with murder, and they'll be proud of glorious war that shattered all their pride. Men who went to battle, grim and glad. Children with eyes that hate you, broken